Right. So, hello everyone, and welcome one more time to the channel. Today we have with us Manuj Jindal, who a lot of you might already know because I know that I get this feedback from a lot of the people who watch the channel in the comments, people who are in our courses, and in general that Manuj Jindal's channel is one of the channels that a lot of people watch. And his channel is absolutely one of the most amazing resources that you'll find for actual learning for what is required for clearing the UPSC Civil Services Exam. So, like, Manuj, welcome to our channel, and it's great to have you here. How are you doing today?
Thanks, Abhijit. I'm doing well. Thanks a lot for inviting me. I have also seen your channel and I really like it. And you know, it just happens that we somehow touch base. In fact, we reached out to each other on Twitter, and then I'm very happy to be here today, actually.
And like, I think okay, so this conversation might run off in multiple directions because Manuj and me have been chatting for 10-15 minutes. So we'll try and stick to
Yeah.
UPSC, but I think we'll digress here and there because it's very interesting to talk to the guy. And so Twitter has been one of the places for me which has been the most serendipitous. YouTube obviously is great, but I think Twitter is a lot more where you can have a lot more direct conversation going. What do you think about it?
Hmm.
Between all social media channels, like I think you have a profile on Twitter, you have one on Instagram, you have on YouTube. I think
Yeah.
you're on Quora.
Yeah. I am
You're
on
there.
Core as well. Yeah. Not very
And
active, but I am on Core. Yeah.
you're there. So, like,
Yeah.
which is your favorite channel for communication in general?
Yeah, well, that's an interesting question. So I think, YouTube obviously is my favorite because I have a lot of followers there and
Mm.
a lot of people watch my videos, and whatever I put there, I put a
Mm.
lot of effort into it. So when you put a lot of effort into something, put a lot of thought into something, that obviously becomes your little baby, because you're putting your heart and soul into it. But when
That's
it comes to, yeah, so I'm sure for Twitter, because you have such a good Twitter following, I've seen. So for Twitter, you might be, or when people, it becomes hard for me to post on YouTube and Twitter and Instagram. So
yeah.
that's why I don't focus too much on Twitter or Instagram. My focus is always thinking about, okay, what can I put on YouTube, right? So that's why it's my favorite that way. And obviously, there are so many great sources on YouTube. So I personally learned a lot from YouTube. I found good channels
Mm.
when I was preparing. There are some channels that I love to follow because there's so much great
So,
stuff I can learn.
actually,
Yeah.
this is one of the things that I was meaning to ask you. Like, what are some channels that you followed during your preparation journey, and now in 2022, what are some YouTube channels that you're following? Like, may not be related to UPSC, but in general also.
Yeah. So when I was preparing, I don't think there were so many YouTube channels at that
Yeah.
time, particularly for UPSC 2014, 15, 16 era.
Mm.
After I think 18, this kind of YouTube channels have
It
really
kind of
picked up,
exploded.
exploded, and then there are actually good channels now.
Mm.
So at that time, I was not following UPSC specific things, but then I used to really like, there was a, because my optional was management, so there were some
Mm.
statistics channels I used to watch because they used to teach statistics, which is part of management optional. So I used to just find channels what
Okay.
would cater to what I needed. And then I remember at that time I used to watch Khan Academy for
Mm.
clarifying my very basic doubts in certain things, like some CSAT topics, solving some kind of logic problems or math problems or comprehension problems. So I would randomly find some kind of channels and just specifically watch 2, 3 videos, 4, 5 videos that would serve my end. But I did not have a dedicated channel I would watch at that time. So UPSC way, from that perspective, I would say that today I think there is a channel, Physics Girl. So this
Mm.
American person, she teaches physics. I think it's excellent for, I don't think it's a UPSC channel, of course, but it's
Mm.
for any kid who wants to learn physics, who someone has interest in physics. That one I really like. I like Amit Gupta Sen. I
Amit
think
Sen
I'm
Gupta.
getting Amit Sen Gupta. Though that guy is, I think he's a very good content creator.
Mm.
I've never seen his face. He just, kind of makes videos on
And
his,
he is
yeah,
absolutely phenomenal, I feel.
yeah.
The way he explains things, it's very, very great.
Very great. Yeah, very great. So he really has a clarity of thought.
Yeah.
I've seen some of your videos. I like your channel because it is good content, because I appreciate that, to the point,
Thank you for
having
that.
a clarity of things. So these are a few channels that I like nowadays. And I think there are a ton more, but I think maybe if you have some you can share, maybe I'll check them out.
So obviously, I watch a couple of मतलब I मेरे interests थोड़े थोड़े मतलब 3-6 महीने में change होते रहते हैं. So
Hmm.
there was this channel Agad Mator for chess that I'd been following for a while, and then there is Gotham Chess.
Nice.
So these are the two big, chess creators on YouTube. So Agad
Yeah.
Mator he'll tell you these amazing stories about this chess championship. So I think one of the things that you can probably check out is a 1960 World Chess Championship match between Mikhail Botvinnik and Mikhail Tal.
Okay.
So you may not like chess, you may not be into chess, but you'll be very into the story, is what I can say, because that guy is an amazing storyteller. And this is also something that I've realized, that all the people who are doing well on YouTube, or people who have over time done well on YouTube, you included in that, are people who are great storytellers. What do you think about that? What's your take on it?
Yeah,
How
yeah,
important is
absolutely.
storytelling?
Storytelling is core of our DNA. I feel like we love good stories. Humans love good stories, and we love good storytellers as well. So, and by stories, I mean these can be stories about other people. These can be fiction. These can be stories about, so like, move, whether it is in a written format, whether it's in a video format. Stories are always what we are looking for, because stories kind of connect the dots in our lives also. They
Yeah.
help us to get lessons, they help us to stay entertained. So all these different kind of needs that we have in our life, they're met through stories as well. So for example, you might Sapiens, right?
Uh,
So such a great story. It is not just history, it is great storytelling.
so
Yeah.
actually, there is, when I read Sapiens for the first time, I was obviously blown away. It was, I think, back in college. I was 2012, 13 is when the book came out. I think 10, 11, 12 ke aaspaas book आई थी. First couple of years I read the book. It was amazing. It blew me away. And I'm like, why is this not common knowledge?
Yeah.
Right. But later on, over the years, what I've read more about is कि Sapiens has a lot of factual errors.
Yeah.
It's such a great story that you don't notice them, like if you're just reading it for the fun of it. You have to be looking for the errors, and you'll find that it's
Errors.
riddled with a lot of errors. And so, and despite that, like, look at the success of that book. It's
Yeah.
just gospel कि भाई मतलब ये
Yeah.
तो क्या ही लिख दिया इन्होंने.
Yeah.
So that also, and I think that somehow connects back to UPSC, because like there have been some eloquent toppers in the last couple of years. Anudeep Durishetty, Gaurav Agarwal, I feel are like the most elaborate on them, because these are the people who really clarified what needs to be done in the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Anudeep Durishetty said a very, very simple thing. He said, and for those of you who don't know, Anudeep Durishetty is CSC 2017 rank 1. What he said was that, cut down your sentences, use fewer words, say a lot of things in smaller sentences and concise sentences.
Yeah.
It's great advice, but it's
Yeah.
very difficult to put it into practice. What do you
Yeah.
think?
Absolutely. That is a fantastic advice. And
Mm.
it is one of the fundamentals of writing,
Yeah.
actually. Writing in short sentences, writing in things that are easy to understand. So I will tell you a fact, very interesting fact. You might not know about it. Many people might not know about it. When the speech of the President of the United States is written,
Mm.
so the guy who edits the speech, so there is a guy who writes the speech and then it goes through multiple edits.
Yeah.
So people who edit the speech, they specifically hire teachers, or they specifically hire people who are experts in understanding whether those sentences can be understood by fifth grade students. So they boil it down. So,
Absolutely.
because they hire the best writers in the US. So
Mm.
obviously these are Harvard, MIT graduates, whatever, right? So they're going to write complex things and they're going to
Mm.
write great ideas. But no one is going to understand them. No one is going to understand these
Very
great
true.
ideas. So they hire these experts to boil it down to a
Mm.
level that a fifth, fourth grader can understand them. Similarly, you might know this guy, Professor Feynman. So Professor Feynman, who is
Mm.
one of the greatest physics professor ever born. Just read about him sometime if you get a time.
Richard
There is
Feynman,
a,
and I think he
yeah,
has this great book called Surely You're Joking, Mr. Feynman. Absolutely
yeah,
wonderful.
yeah. So he also has this. He once said that if you can't make someone understand complex, if you can't make some say 2 year, 5 year old child understand what you are trying to explain to a physicist,
Mm.
then you don't yourself understand it. Very simple, right? So you might know some complex things, but you
Mm.
have to be able to communicate them as well. Because without communication, So same thing applies to UPSC.
Yeah.
You can be a fantastic thinker. You
Hmm.
can be a fantastic, you might have studied all the books, you might have done everything, but if you can't communicate it to the
Examiner.
checker who's checking, you can't, the person who's checking your sheets, and he doesn't have time to go into the complexity of your ideas.
Good point. Yes.
Yeah, he has to just see the sentence, understand it, get the point, and move ahead. Right. So short sentences, simple words, fewer words are the best way to make that happen. So if you have long sentences, it's not going to happen.
So, like, I think one of the things that I figured out with this was that, and like, this is not my original idea, this is borrowed, like all good ideas, that when we're writing, what's happening is we've read something, we've thought about it,
Hmm.
and like in that context, because we've read a lot and we have a lot of information in our head, but we're writing down very few things. So we think कि हम complex कुछ चीज लिखेंगे and सामने वाले को समझ आएगी, with the assumption that they have the same amount of context, with same amount of background information as we have, which generally is not the case. Because the examiner, what they're doing is they're reading your writing and then deciphering what you are trying to say.
Yeah.
And in that, there is a lot of gap sometimes, that we try
Yeah.
to say a lot in very few words and then we cut down on the meanings. And that's why I feel it's a very, very hard thing to cut down the words, at the same time preserve the meaning. And
No, absolutely. Yeah.
Anudeep did a great thing. He put it in as precise words as possible, which was the thing that he was talking about. People write short sentences, be concise, be precise.
Yeah.
Put into practice, it's like absolutely hard.
It is very difficult. Yeah.
And I think you have also done that pretty well, because I've seen a lot of videos on your channel. They're generally less than 15 minutes and they're very, very content rich and packed with content. Like, for example, you had a couple of videos on, like, you are teaching people how to write good answers live. And I think that's a brilliant initiative, because like writing well is such an underappreciated skill, especially in UPSC CSE.
Yeah. Yeah. See, I think I think at the end of the day, writing is one of those techniques, one of those arts, skills, or whatever you want to call it, that shows the clarity of your mind.
Yes.
If you are able to write in few words and simply able to communicate to the reader in a very small amount of words, like look at the UPSC questions, right? They require you to answer something in 150 words. It's nothing.
Yeah.
150 words. I mean, people are writing doctorates in like thousands of words.
Hmm.
Thousands meaning like 1 lakh word. There will be an average doctorate will be like a lakh word, 1 lakh words, 100,000 words. So you have to write in 150 words and you have to write complex things. Like I remember a question in UPSC, they asked, why was the Battle of Panipat fought in Panipat? You know,
Yeah.
so this was a question in 14 or 15.
I think, I think it was in 13, because I
It was in
remember
13, was it?
it was in
Yeah.
13, because my first time I was giving the paper, I think 14 maybe, because like I gave prelims that year, I couldn't clear, and I remember checking the paper of mains and I'm like, कि भाई ये कैसा सवाल पूछा है इन्होंने?
ये कहाँ पे पढ़ाया जाता है या क्या है, right? मतलब कौन पढ़ाता है
Exactly.
उसको? There will not be any book. It will tell you that you will read in UPSC materials that why Battle of Panipat was fought in Panipat. But then this is how you have to use your knowledge, what you've learned from just from the basic NCERT books, history books that you've read, and you have to derive reasonings from there, right?
Exactly.
उसको
And
short में बताना, that is also an art. क्योंकि उसमें बच्चे क्या करेंगे? Normally students will write from this year to this year, Battle of Panipat was fought. These people were
they'll give a
involved.
lot of
This
facts.
it doesn't matter. That information is not asked in the question, right? What they're asking in the question is why it was fought there. तो
Yes.
अगर तुम directly भी वो 4 point लिख दोगे ना 100 words में कि this is the reason why it was fought there, you will get marks in that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely true, and absolutely agree with you on this, because like this I feel is one of the most common problems that people face. Ki they have facts and they have a lot of information, but they don't know how to synthesize that information.
Synthesize it.
कि
Yeah.
मेरे पास बहुत सारी चीजें आ रही हैं, मुझे दिख रहा है कि हाँ like जैसे let's talk about the economy for that matter, कि like I'm hearing कि हाँ मतलब पेट्रोल का प्राइस बढ़ गया है, I'm hearing कि हाँ जी मतलब coal imports बढ़ गए हैं, price of coal is going up, but I don't connect it to the fact that 3 months down the line this will mean that price of everything else is going to go up.
Yeah.
Right, but connection नहीं बन पाता वो, हम रोज ये चीज पढ़ रहे हैं but it's somehow disjointed in our head and we're not able to make that connection. And this is a hard skill to teach, I feel.
Hmm.
You can teach somebody how to mug up facts. You can teach somebody, these are the facts that you need to know. All of this information is something that you build on. But to be able to synthesize that information and get an outcome which you're working towards is something that I feel is required, because just like you've given the example, it's a brilliant example. They're not asking you about the three battles of Panipat.
Hmm.
They're asking you why Panipat. Well,
Yeah.
why the three battles in Panipat? Why not someplace else? Like, what the hell is happening in Panipat? ऐसा कुछ magnetic है इधर कि
Yeah.
भैया सब लोग यहीं पे आके मरेंगे?
Yeah. So exactly. So the point that you are making is actually the fact
Hmm.
that we are so overloaded with information nowadays that our judgment making or even analysis becomes
Yes.
it becomes very poor, because we are not able to figure out which information is correct for what kind of decision making or what kind of thing. So let's say there is some question asked,
Hmm.
we suddenly jump to information to find the answer for that question.
Yes.
So let's say UPSC mein they are asking whatever question, Panipat example ho gaya, or they
Hmm.
are asking question that why certain period was famous for Buddhism, or
Hmm.
Buddhism developed during that period, Pala period. So your mind is suddenly jumping to, because you've ratified or you
Because
memorized
you know facts.
facts,
That's what you've
you know
read.
facts. Yeah, exactly, because you know facts, and it is very, very easy, or it is very comfortable for you to access those facts from your brain
Hmm.
and just spit them out on the piece of paper, right?
Hmm.
Because time pressure bhi hota hai, practice bhi. So what,
Definitely.
what what students have to focus on is take your time, read the question, understand it, understand the keywords, and then think for a second. You have to develop that, and it comes with practice. You have to think for a second. You have to give that 10 seconds to your brain to understand it, to understand what they're trying to ask, and then go for the answer according to that question.
Yeah.
Normally क्या होता है, जल्दी जल्दी में whatever is coming, you are just kind of vomiting it out, and
It's an
then
information dump. Like people just
it's
look
an
at one
information dump.
keyword, कि उन्होंने देखा Battle of Panipat. They didn't look at why Battle of Panipat. They just looked at Battle of Panipat and they'll dump three battles of Panipat. They'll tell you who the winner was, who the victor was, क्या हुआ, क्या नहीं हुआ. They'll tell you
Exactly.
what and where,
Hmm.
but it's very difficult for people to be able to tell you why.
Why? Yeah.
And
So that's why I keep telling on my channel also, I've told that a few times. Always try to, whenever you're reading something
Hmm.
and whenever it feels important, it is linked to the syllabus, there is a something importance to that particular topic. Try to
Hmm.
figure out why, how, where, when. I mean, these are when, where, these are easier questions, but why and how, these are a little bit harder questions to answer.
Yeah.
So once you synthesize that in your brain, थोड़ा सा curiosity उसमें लाओ, थोड़ा
Hmm.
सा उसमें अपनी तरफ से भी पूछो ना, क्या क्यों हुआ ऐसा, मतलब एक वो नेचुरल सेंस ऑफ क्यूरियोसिटी डेवलप हो जाता है, ऐसा नहीं है कि
Yeah.
यू हैव टू बी बॉर्न विद इट. So I feel that is very important, and I think it's great that you're recognizing that, because I think a lot of people miss that out completely through this preparation
Like
phase.
for example, the one of the most frequent doubts and questions that I get from people in our batches is कि like I find this subject boring. How do I do it?
Hmm.
Like this is absolutely one of the most common things that you find कि मतलब मुझे ये सब्जेक्ट बोरिंग लगता है, मैं क्या करूं, मैं कैसे करूं. मैंने कहा कि देखो, आप तैयारी कर रहे हो, वे preparing for UPSC, it's your duty and responsibility that if you find something boring, make it interesting.
Yeah, exactly.
Figure out how to make it interesting. For example, well, the example that I gave over there is कि ancient and medieval history has been a bane for me. Like I've read the books, I've done everything, but it's just keep like it's a dry subject for some reason. Like I don't, how would you say, relate to that subject all that much. So I figured,
You
how
find
can
it,
I do
yeah,
that?
you just didn't find it interesting enough
I
for
didn't.
whatever. Yeah. Yeah.
So like I was thinking about how do I go about making it interesting. So one of the reasons
Hmm.
why I found is ki, like I'm very interested in people and biographies and like stories of people.
Hmm.
So the thing that I found interesting, the great thing about ancient history would be ki, I'll go into these eras
Hmm.
around the time of the Buddha, right?
Hmm.
So Buddha was contemporary with some of the Magadhan kings,
Hmm.
right?
Yes.
So Ajat Shatru, Bimbisar, these were kings who
Hmm.
lived at the time of the Buddha.
Hmm.
And if you read the stories, because I've read a lot of biographies of the Buddha, because I was interested in keeping, what the hell is this guy saying? Because like Buddha, I feel 2,500 साल पहले आके he's like he solved everything. He solved
Hmm.
all problems. The solution exists. It's just like
Hmm.
it's for you to like figure that out and apply it in your life. But he solved everything. So Buddha के time पे these are these kings Ajat Shatru, Bimbisar, and they take the counsel of the Buddha. Well, look at how interesting that would be. And the analogy that I
Hmm.
brought to this was कि an equivalent figure in the present day would be somebody like Baba Ramdev. Right? Because like this is a religious man. They don't know he's going to be great. Well, they know that he's something special.
Yeah.
People who are living in the time of the Buddha, they know this guy is something special. He's something different. Well, like, he's not your regular guy. But they don't know that he'll be known like 2,500 years later.
Yeah.
They don't have that perspective then. Like similarly,
Yeah.
I don't know if Baba Ramdev is going to be known like 2,000 years later as the rejuvenator of yoga or something in India. But
Yeah.
in the present day, he's somebody that's consulted by the political leaders. He is somebody important. So, but that's one way, a light-hearted comparison that made history, ancient history for that matter, suddenly more interesting to me, because I was just trying to figure out, which is a character over there which might be in the present also.
No, I really like that line of thinking because number one, you are making things interesting for yourself, right?
Yeah.
Because what you otherwise found boring is now somewhat more relatable and
Exactly.
somewhat more interesting. And number two, the second thing you're doing in this is you are creating stories for yourself to remember. So I always tell students that the easiest way to remember anything is to create a story in your mind about it.
Yeah.
To have a context, to have a knowledge analogy, like you created an analogy ki bhai us time pe ye tha to is time pe kya hai,
Exactly.
something like that. So when we start relating things to ourselves, when we start creating stories, it becomes much easier, and that is how great teachers are. जो अच्छे टीचर्स होते हैं वो मैथ्स को भी इंटरेस्टिंग बना देते हैं जब किसी कोई बच्चा मैथ्स किसी को अच्छी नहीं लगती. When I struggled a lot with maths in my 11th, 12th and chemistry because whatever traditional ways of teaching was not helping me.
Yeah.
But eventually, how I overcame that was through figure out, make it more interesting, more exciting. Because so that is what happens in UPSC. A lot of subjects, like you are saying, ancient history is not working for someone, so they have to figure out ways to make it interesting. Watch YouTube videos. Maybe there will be some. So there's this channel on YouTube which ancient world history का, not ancient world history का एक channel था. वो MIT का बंदा है, वो ऐसे रैंडम एनिमेशंस बना के फनी टाइप की, आई एम नॉट रिमेम्बरिंग द नेम, एंड ही
I think I know. Is this the history of everything in like 30 minutes or something of that sort?
something like that. Yeah, it's like he used to make these animations and he used to tell in a really funny way हिस्ट्री ऑफ द वर्ल्ड, क्योंकि हिस्ट्री ऑफ द वर्ल्ड इज आल्सो इन अ मेन सिलेबस, तो उससे मैंने पढ़ा था बहुत सारा. तो वो उसके अब उसने जब इंडियन हिस्ट्री बताई तो हमने तो एनसीईआरटी से पढ़ी हुई है, तो हम तो एकदम भाई फन्ने खा हो गए, हमने सब पढ़ ऑल दिस. सो आई यूज्ड टू बी लाइक अरे ये बुद्धा के बारे में बता रहे हैं, गलत बता रहा है, क्योंकि थोड़ा सा वो अमेरिकन हिस्ट्री अमेरिका में जो पढ़ाया जाता है वो उसके हिसाब से पढ़ा रहा था, तो उसमें थोड़ा फैक्चुअल अलग होता है, एरर्स होते हैं या अलग होता है, जो भी होता है. तो बट इट वाज इंटरेस्टिंग, इट मेड माय लाइफ मच इजियर टू रीड वर्ल्ड हिस्ट्री थ्रू हिम. सो आई थिंक दैट्स व्हाट स्टूडेंट शुड डू. जैसे तुम कह रहे हो ना, एनालिजी बनाओ, कुछ करो, तो उसको इंटरेस्टिंग बनाओ यार. मतलब लाइफ में इंटरेस्टिंग नहीं हुआ तो इतना सारा कैसे कवर करोगे, इतना सारा
Exactly. कि ये this is your job. This is not something that you can take lightly. If it's boring, find out ways to make it interesting.
It's like a date, to be honest. It's like dating someone. If it is not going to continue to be interesting, there's going to be a breakup. It is not going to work out, right? You have to keep it interesting. You have to keep doing something. You have to always have that spark. So same thing with studies also. Yaar. You are spending so much time with your books. You have to make them interesting somehow.
I give the analogy of a job. You've given the analogy of a relationship. I generally give the analogy of a job that, sometimes there'll be some projects that you'll find absolutely interesting that you want to do. That is like, oh my God, I'm learning so much. ये मजा आ रहा है करने में, देखने में क्या हो रहा है, क्या नहीं हो रहा है, कैसे हो रहा है. But there also be some projects which is like, अबे यार, ये फिर से करना पड़ रहा है. But you have to do it. It's a job. It's not like you have a choice. There are some things in life. For example, recently मुझे passport renew करवाना था. So, like, it's a job. It has to be done. But there's no other way around it, right?
Yeah, it's very boring and it's very kind of you will
Paperwork
think it's a waste of my time, but you have to do it.
You
Yeah,
have to
you
do
have
it.
to do it.
There's no choice. And right, कि मतलब
Yeah.
नहीं करवाओगे तो नहीं बनेगा, नहीं बनेगा तो भाई ठीक है, that's it. That's all
You
there is
can't
to
go
it.
outside then. ठीक है, you decide.
हाँ, मतलब you live with the consequences of your actions.
Yeah. So same thing even as an IS officer. There are a lot of routine and boring things. बहुत files होती हैं. These files are like very boring. There is nothing in them. There are a lot of government orders you have to study, you have to understand, you have to remember. These are very boring things, to be honest. But you have to do it. It's your job, and these things matter. ऐसा नहीं है कि उसका consequence नहीं होगा कुछ. If you don't do those things, consequences are there, serious consequences. But there are a lot of interesting things. As a officer, I think you get to do a lot of interesting things, and that's where you find your joy, and that's what carries you through. So I think preparation, maybe students must find their joy. So one thing I used to do was, because I was living near Delhi, मैं गाजियाबाद में रहता था, so I used to visit museums. मैं वहाँ पे आई
Okay.
थिंक यूपीएससी के
Absolutely.
एक पास म्यूजियम है, नेशनल म्यूजियम ऑफ मॉडर्न आर्ट है।
Yes.
फिर एक
NMMA.
कुतुब मीनार में गया था। तो आई यूज्ड टू जस्ट फाइंड इट फन कि थिंग्स आई एम रीडिंग, आई कैन सी द नंदी बुल और मे बी सम डांसिंग गर्ल का स्टैचू एक्चुअल थिंग इन
मतलब
द
the
नेशनल
Chola
म्यूजियम।
bronzes, you go to the National Museum, you see Chola
या
bronzes, you see
चूला
those,
ब्रॉन्जेस।
मतलब Gandhara School of Art, Mathura School of Art, all of those things, you actually go and see it.
या और उससे बहुत डिफरेंस पड़ता है एक्चुअली
It
इफ
does.
इफ
It
यूर
makes a hell of a
अंडरस्टैंडिंग।
lot of
सो
difference.
अभी आई थिंक द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन म्यूजियम हैज बीन स्टार्टेड इन दिल्ली। सो मुझे लगता
Hmm.
है कि और मोस्ट लॉट ऑफ एस्पिरेंट्स आर इन
जो भी
अबाउट
हैं,
आर इन
at least they should.
जाओ। हाँ जाओ देख के आओ। एंड पीपल हु आर स्टेइंग अब्रॉड द लाइक सॉरी नॉट अब्रॉड बट अक्रॉस द कंट्री, मे बी अब्रॉड पीपल आर
वीडियोस की
आल्सो
पर्पसेस के लिए अब्रॉड ही है वो.
people who are like Hyderabad
Hmm.
museum is there, and then Bangalore,
Exactly.
you guys, they can always, so that's how you make it interesting, I feel.
So I think one of the things that I've been meaning to ask you for a while is, जैसे कि हमने थोड़ी देर पहले भी बात करी थी कि synthesis is something of a hard problem that people have. कि हमारे पास फैक्ट्स है बहुत सारे, यूपीएससी की तैयारी करते हुए भी चीज होती है, एंड कि मेरे को बहुत सारे फैक्ट्स पता है. आई नो द प्रोज एंड द कॉन्स ऑफ द सिचुएशन of, let's say,
Hmm.
any government scheme or any like particular incident or anything. I know the
Hmm.
pros and cons, but it's very difficult for like people to form an opinion out of it. And even if they do form an opinion, they find it hard to communicate that opinion.
Hmm.
So let's discuss that part in the second half of the video, which you'll find on Manuj's channel. And thank you all for joining, and we'll continue the video on the second channel. You can check it out. Link will be in the video description.